Diane Shannon. We've been saved probably for 22 years now. And we just hope giving our testimony about tithes and offerings can encourage you if you aren't participating or trusting God in that area of your life. And if you are, that it'll encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. So one of the verses in the Bible that we stand on is that, if you're willing and obedient, you'll eat the good of the land. And in every area of our life, there's areas where we're really willing in and not so obedient in, and then there's areas that we're obedient in, but we're not that willing in. So, but the area of finances, I guess from the start of when we started following God, we've always been willing and obedient. And it isn't that we come from a privileged background at all. My wife probably comes from a more poverty level background than I do. But it isn't because we've always had more than enough and done anything like that. It's just because that's just an area where we just really believe that God is doing great things in our life and equipping us to do it. So we've always tithed. We got to the place where when we had children, when we had our children at first, we agreed that my wife was going to stop working outside of the house and stay at home and be with the kids when they were small. So obviously that took a drastic hit in our monthly budget. So, but it was an area that on paper looked like we could do it, but it was going to be really tight. And one of the areas or the things that we've learned since we've been following God is God calls us to do stuff, but it doesn't necessarily always start out being easy.
Right.
There's always a God part and there's a man part to everything working. It's a partnership that we have with God. And so when you do things, and when we stepped out in tithing and when she stopped working, it was tight. It was really tight each month. She had to do things with the numbers and try to get things to work, but God always made sure that we never went without. Like I said, over half of our income that month, those starting then went away. So our tithing amount went down, obviously, but it was a stretch for us to be able to do it. But God continued to provide. And as we would look back over the months, we would always see that more would go out than would ever come in. And it was just truly God doing miracles along that way to make things happen. Things didn't break during that time. Things just lasted, and it was just an amazing time. Even though sometimes it was a struggle to write that check out every week and give it into the offering, because we could have used it for other things. It was still our obedience to God is what we did, and we were both willing and obedient, and we did eat the good of the land in that part. So, I'll turn it over to you so you can talk about the special offering you gave and what happened out of it.
Right. So many things happened along the way that, gosh, we could write them all down. It would just go on. But one that really sticks out to me and that I share a lot with people is when my kids were little. Both were, I think, under 3. We still had kids in diapers. So Andrea was in formula still. And it was really, really tight that particular summer for the money. And as Sean said, we had agreed that tithing, we were not going to compromise on that. That was something we were determined to do and to trust God. And I remember one morning I was sitting on my bed and I was praying, and the Lord told me, I want you to give a $10 offering. Now that doesn't seem like much, except that particular week on that Monday morning, $10 was all we had left to get through the rest of the week, even though we had small children that were in diapers and needed formula. But I knew that God had spoke to me to give that $10. So I called my husband, he agreed, and I sent that $10 off. The next day, he called me around lunchtime, and even though it was October and raises were only ever given out in his company in March, he got a $10,000 a year raise. And I knew instantly that was because we took that step to trust God for those 4 days with the last $10. He used that $10 to bless someone, and in turn blessed us because we were willing and obedient. And that's just one example. I mean, there's so many. That's a big example. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it's little things. Maybe it's, like you said, the dishwasher started leaking and we prayed and it stopped leaking, and 3 years later we were still using the same dishwasher. Or, you know, somebody showed up and said, hey, I had extra dinner, and they gave us a meal. Or, you know, little things, you know, standing in the line at the grocery store and somebody said, oh, you know, your daughter's so cute, here, let me just, you know, buy that toy for her, whatever. It may be little things, but the point is that when we are willing and obedient, when we trust God, because that's really what it was us trusting God, using our faith in scary times, and it wasn't always easy, you know, we had the same thoughts as everyone else, but when we trust God, He's anxious to show us that He's true to His word.